I was working immigration at Frankfurt Airport when an American man approached my booth holding his passport like a golden ticket. He slapped it on the counter and said, "American citizen. Just here for the weekend." I nodded and reached for the stamp. He pulled the passport back. "Wait, do you really need to stamp it? These pages are expensive, and I travel a lot." I explained that passport stamps were mandatory for non-EU citizens entering Germany. He looked genuinely confused. "But America and Germany are allies. We rebuilt you after the war. Doesn't that count for something?" I told him international law didn't work on a favor system. He asked if he could pay a fee to skip the stamp. When I said no, he suggested I just write the date on a post-it note instead. That way we both win. He was completely serious. I stamped his passport while he watched like I was keying his car. He muttered something about German efficiency being overrated. His passport had 40 empty pages. At Heathrow, a woman insisted she didn't need to remove her shoes for security because she was wearing expensive footwear. She showed me the receipt. $800 for boots. I told her everyone removes their shoes. She said that policy was clearly designed for cheap shoes and asked if there was a premium security lane. There wasn't. And that was just Monday morning. I worked the information desk at Tokyo Narita Airport. An American couple approached me holding a map of Japan they'd printed from Google. The husband pointed at Tokyo and said, "We're going to Kyoto. How long is the drive?" I told him most people take the bullet train. It's faster and easier than driving. He laughed and said, "We're from Texas. We know how to drive." His wife added that they'd specifically rented a car because they wanted the freedom of the open road. I explained that Japanese highways have tolls that can cost over $100, traffic drives on the left, and all the signs would be in Japanese. The husband waved this off. GPS works everywhere. Plus, I drove in Mexico once. I asked if he had an international driving permit. He said he had a Texas license and Texas was bigger than Japan, so it should count for more. His wife asked if Japanese cars were automatic or if they'd need to learn stick shift, like in Europe. I told them the car rental desk could explain everything. The husband thanked me and said, "You worry too much. Americans invented cars. I think we'll figure it out." They left confidently. 3 hours later, they were back at my desk asking about train tickets. The rental company wouldn't accept his Texas license without an international permit. The husband seemed personally offended. This is discrimination against American drivers. At Dubai International, I watched a passenger argue with a gate agent about why he couldn't bring his emotional support coffee maker on board. He'd packed a full drip machine in his carry-on because airline coffee is undrinkable. The agent explained it had a heating element and water reservoir, making it prohibited. The man argued that his doctor had recommended he maintain his morning routine while traveling for anxiety purposes. He showed her a note from someone named Dr. Phil. Not a real prescription. A quote from the TV show printed from Facebook. The agent asked if he'd like to check the coffee maker. He said absolutely not because airport baggage handlers don't respect American property. He asked if first-class passengers got different rules. When she said no, he asked to speak to Emirates' corporate office about their anti-coffee policies. She suggested he buy coffee on the plane. He said that wasn't the same because it wouldn't be made with his energy. Eventually, security confiscated the coffee maker. He filmed the entire interaction and promised it would go viral as an example of Middle Eastern airports targeting American travelers. His video got 47 views. 43 were from his family group chat arguing about whether Dr. Phil counted as a medical professional. I'm a customs officer in Auckland. An American woman came through with 8 suitcases of trail mix, protein bars, and packaged snack. Our agriculture declaration form clearly asks about food items. She'd checked no. When we opened her luggage, she seemed surprised we were concerned. It's just snacks. Packaged stuff from Costco. I explained New Zealand has strict biosecurity laws. Even packaged food needs to be declared. She said that seemed paranoid for a modern country. I told her we were protecting our agriculture from foreign pests and diseases. She responded that America has the FDA, so our food is basically sterile. You should be thanking me for bringing quality nutrition to your island. I informed her New Zealand wasn't technically an island, we were 2 main islands plus several smaller ones, and our biosecurity wasn't up for debate. She said she'd traveled to Canada with snacks and nobody cared. When I explained different countries have different rules, she asked why New Zealand couldn't just follow America's lead on this stuff. I gave her 2 options. Surrender the food or pay for a biosecurity inspection that could take hours and cost $300. She chose option 3, demanding to speak to someone who understood international traveler rights. My supervisor told her the exact same thing I did. She surrendered the snacks while muttering that she'd never visit Australia's little brother again. We got her leftover Kirkland trail mix in the break room for a week. I'm a Lufthansa gate agent in Munich. An American man approached 40 minutes after his flight to Prague had departed. He was holding a boarding pass and looked confused rather than panicked. Your plane is still here, he said, pointing at an aircraft at a nearby gate. I explained that wasn't his plane. His flight had already left. He checked his boarding pass. But it says departure is 14:30. It's only 2:45 now. I had to break the news about 24-hour time. His face went through several emotions. Confusion, realization, then anger. Why wouldn't you just write 2:30 p.m. like a normal country? I told him 24-hour time was standard in Europe and most of the world. He said that was deliberately confusing for international travelers. I suggested he could catch the next flight to Prague in 4 hours. He asked if Lufthansa would cover the change fee since your boarding pass was unclear. I explained the boarding pass was perfectly clear in 24-hour format. He insisted that America invented airplanes, so American time format should be the international standard. The Wright brothers didn't use military time. He demanded I call Prague and ask them to hold the plane. When I explained the flight had been gone for 40 minutes, he asked if there was a faster plane that could catch up to it. He was completely serious. I rebooked him on the next flight for a €200 change fee. He paid while explaining that Europe needed to modernize its time system. His new boarding pass said 18:30. I watched him write 6:30 p.m. next to it in pen. At Singapore Changi Airport, I staffed the transfer desk. An American woman missed her connection to Bali because she'd spent 3 hours shopping in the terminal. She seemed surprised her plane hadn't waited. I was only in the duty-free for a bit. Her boarding pass clearly showed her gate and departure time. She'd ignored 5 announcements calling her name. I explained we'd have to rebook her. She asked why Singapore Airlines didn't just hold planes for shopping passengers. I told her we had 200 passengers who boarded on time. She said they could have waited 10 more minutes. Everyone's going to the same place anyway. I found her a seat on the next flight, departing in 6 hours. She asked if the airline would compensate her for the inconvenience with lounge access or a hotel room. I explained missed connections due to shopping weren't covered. She argued that the duty-free placement was designed to trap passengers, and therefore the airline's responsibility. You put a Tiffany's right by the gate. That's entrapment. I suggested she could wait in the terminal. She asked if Singapore had faster flights since this was clearly a hub. When I said Bali was 3 hours away regardless of airline, she asked if there were private jets she could join, like ride-sharing but for planes. She seemed disappointed this wasn't a service we offered. 6 hours later, she missed her second flight. She'd gone back to Tiffany's to make the trip worthwhile. I work customer service at Amsterdam Schiphol. An American man approached my desk furious about bicycle infrastructure. He'd apparently walked outside for a cigarette and gotten yelled at by a cyclist for standing in the bike lane. There are more bikes than cars out there. How is that legal? I explained that the Netherlands has extensive cycling infrastructure and cyclists have right-of-way in bike lanes. He said that seemed backwards for a developed nation. I told him the Dutch had been cycling for over a century. He responded that America had cars for over a century, and we'd figured out they were better. You can't fit groceries on a bike. When I mentioned cargo bikes, he said those were just tiny trucks that couldn't handle real American shopping trips. He asked if the Netherlands was too poor to afford proper road. I assured him we had excellent roads, but cycling was culturally important and environmentally friendly. He said the environment was fine and Amsterdam should focus on parking lot. You've got all this canal space going to waste. I asked if he'd enjoyed his visit otherwise. He said the city was beautiful but would be perfect with a Walmart and parking. He was flying home to Houston. I didn't mention Houston's traffic. He'd figure it out. I'm an immigration officer at Sydney Airport. An American man in his 60s approached my booth with a passport so worn I could barely read it. Hundreds of stamps from decades of travel. He handed it over with a smile. Been coming to Australia since the 80s. Loved this country. I started processing his entry. He leaned in conversationally. You know what Australia should do? Join America. Like officially. Become the 51st state. I looked up. He was completely serious. Think about it. You already speak English. You love barbecue and beer. You've got beaches and wide open spaces. You're basically Texas with better accents. I told him Australia was a sovereign nation with its own government, economy, and international relationships. He waved this off. Sure. But wouldn't it be easier to just merge? You could keep your flag, maybe add some stars to ours. We'd share military, you'd get access to American stores, everyone wins. I asked why he thought Australia would want this. He said, You're already so American anyway. You've got McDonald's, you watch our movies, half your slang comes from California. Why not make it official? I pointed out that Australia had a strong national identity, our own political system, and no interest in becoming part of America. He looked genuinely puzzled. But don't you want Costco? I told him we had Costco. He paused. Really? Then what's stopping you? I stamped his passport and welcomed him to Australia. As he walked away, I heard him tell his wife, I'm telling you, honey, they're thinking about it. I could see it in his eyes. He'd been coming here for 40 years. Still didn't know the difference between cultural exchange and colonization. His wife asked if they had Target in Sydney. He said probably not, since we weren't a state yet. The confidence never wavers. The logic never improves. And somewhere right now, another American is confidently explaining to a confused Japanese immigration officer why their cruise ship passport card should work for international air travel because it's still American identification.